yeah, being the first time we're making history in regards to the women's game. I mean, like I said, I started in 2000, but before me, there were these women playing the game back then, and they're, slowly chipping away, and we're sort of paving the way for the women's game. Just recently, I think 2 days ago, the team was announced. So again, making history, building better pathways for our younger generation coming through, and just knowing that we've got those opportunities now, and we're finally being contracted, which is first of its kind in the women's game. It's been a struggle throughout all the years with keeping the game alive, contending against our counterparts, the rugby girls, but still very encouraged by what they're doing in their game as well. As long as we're getting our women sports people out there, that's an encouraging thing. But this is just a stepping stone for us. Yeah.
Cool. So for the non-sports savvy whānau in the house, so when you say contracted, that means you're getting paid, eh? Come on. Put your hands together for that, eh? It's been a long time coming. I think that's awesome. If you're good at something, you should get recognised for that. So, no, thank you for your time. I think I just want to give you the last sort of opportunity to share anything with the whānau here tonight before you come off stage. Is there anything you want to share?
I've never been a part of anything like this, so from me to everybody who has contributed to tonight, I'd just like to acknowledge you all. I know it's taken a lot of time and effort to acknowledge people of the community. I'm proud to be a part of Papakura community. Obviously I didn't grow up here, but it's become home for me. My beautiful wife is from Papakura, hence the reason why I'm here. And now working in the community with the police, I'm really looking forward to just working with everybody here. So, kia ora. Thank you.
Awesome, Mark.
What a pioneer for women in sport and rugby league. A round of applause. Growing up at on a Red Hill, as I did, I never thought that I would have the privilege of doing what I am about to do. Sir Taiha Kure jury is the preeminent jurist, and he is the preeminent expert on Te Tiriti Waitangi in its judicial context. He was appointed a judge in 1974 and was then the chief judge of the Māori Land Court from 1980 to 1998. He was chairman of the Waitangi Tribunal from 1980 to 2004 and was a law commissioner. In 1998, he was appointed to the High Court, and he retired from the High Court in 2004, at which point he was the longest serving member of the New Zealand judiciary. In 2008, the New Year Honours, Sir Tai Kure was appointed a Distinguished Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, which was later rightly converted to the Knight Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit in 2009. In 2009, Sir Tai Kure was appointed by the Attorney General, the Honourable Chris Finlayson, to chair the Ministerial Task Force on the Foreshore and Seabed Act. In 2012, he was elected to the Māori Council and was elected co-chair, a role that he has held until being appointed the sole chair of the national body in April 2016. Sir Tai Kure is married to a prominent Māori lawyer, Lady Donna Hall, who is also here this evening. I am just completely honoured to welcome this distinguished New Zealander, and I ask that you would join with me in the appropriate way to welcome Sir Tai Kure jury to the stage.
cross-examine you. That's all you need to know. Te mea tūtahi nui atu ke koutou, ke tātou toa, ke tai mai ki te whakanui tēnei po. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. It's a real privilege to be here. And thank you so much for that introduction. It's a lot better than a few others that I've heard. If I go back to my home, I'd like you to publish it and send it to Ara and people. They never talk that way to me. But I'm very pleased to be here at this kaumata function. I think it's a bit marginal for some of you. You don't seem to have got quite to that kaumata. Well, I'm saying that because when I was sitting in this district for the Manukau play, it started in about 1982 with Ngāneko and Hinnick. I remember there was an occasion when Dane Tiata and Henry Henare Tūwhāngai were at the marae, and Ngāneko had arranged for the younger people to speak. And Henare Tūwhāngai was very concerned about the younger people speaking. He looked around the room, he saw a few people there, and he thought they were a bit radical. So the next morning he jumped up very quickly and he said, I agree that the young people should now speak, and I will call on them. Well, he didn't call on anyone under 60. So we've got a different idea of what might constitute a kaumata. But it's a real privilege to come here and meet up with these 4 champions. It's pretty good. One marae has got 4. You know, at home we have, if we can get one, we'll have a big party just for that one. But you've got to divide it around amongst so many. It's pretty impressive. But especially good to see you, Hare, again. Yeah, I listened to what you said. I was so impressed with it. We've all known so much about what you have done. And good to hear Ardmore spoken of again. I mean, there were some good occasions there at Ardmore Teachers College. But I listened to you talking about your kuia, taking you up on the hill at Kutarere, where you could see over the whole bay. And yeah, what struck me was that your kuia had great foresight too. The significant thing of calling you up on that hill is not what she said to you, but what she was thinking of you and the sort of person that you were going to become. I thought that was pretty good, Hari. And George, I thought that was nice to catch up with you again. I heard what Daniel had to say about you in the MC when he introduced you. I actually wrote it down. It said, you play, you have played, and you will continue to play. And then I didn't catch the rest of it. But I thought that was so true. On the 4th of July when you were in Wellington, you played pretty hard that night, and you continued to play. And I particularly enjoyed that rendition of Unclaimed Melody. And yeah, I thought that was worth a night of that one, actually. And, you're a man of many talents. And yeah, it's so good to be with you all, and that mix of talent. You've got Laura there on the sporting side. I just thought you set your sights a little bit low when you said your ambition was to beat the boys. They don't get anywhere near to your standard. Anyhow, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about tonight? And last time I was here at the invitation of a person who was at the very beginning of the establishment of this marae, with Brian and Anne. At the beginning of the year, we were here for a meeting of the New Zealand Maori Council. And I've learned a little bit about history tonight from listening to what has been said, and thought I would just like to follow up a little bit about the history of the New Zealand Māori Council, which takes us back to 1860. And you might think, well, 1860 is so long ago, who would really remember anything from there? But what you've got to remember is that if you take Hari's age,
Wow.
he indicated what it was when he said he was 1940, and you double it, that's the length of time from 1860 to now, 2 lifetimes. It's actually much closer to the present day than we may care to think. So it was in 1860 that Governor Gray said that he wanted to introduce law and order into the Māori districts. And he wanted to set up a system of runanga, based on the old councils, of karere, who later became welfare officers, but they were messengers in those days, and watene, or wardens. That's the New Zealand Māori Council. It's a system of councils, of wardens, and it used to be of welfare officers. The concept started back then, but with a big difference. When Governor Gray wanted to introduce it into Waikato, King Tawhio said, no, we will manage it ourselves. We will do it ourselves. And that's the start of the slogan that the Māori Council lives by, which is mana motuhake, of people, Māori people managing their own affairs. In fact, I learned it first as the 4 M's, Māori management of Māori matters. Yeah, it's not Marilyn Monroe twice over, it's Māori management, Māori matters. We grew up with that. A lot of us grew up with that thinking of mana motuhake. But the concept started right back then in the 1860s. It was picked up by the Kotahitanga movement from 1892. That was a movement that set up separate Māori parliaments. There were 10 of these parliaments that sat from 1892 to 1902, one a year, all over the country, saying that we will manage our own affairs through our own parliament. It didn't work. The session at Papawai, which is in the Waitarapa area, decided that they needed to look for some change that would work with government. And in 1899, they met, the leaders of Kotahitanga met with, you know, there's a custom at home that when the music starts, the lady starts singing, it's time to sit down. I don't know what the customs are here. Anyhow, let me just carry on with our sessions with our Maori parliaments. They met in 1899 at Waiamatatini with, gosh, what was that chap's name? That big parliament. Apirana Ngata was the secretary of the Te Aute College Association at that time and was just forming the Young Māori Party. Yes, he was certainly there, and terrible, Sir James Carroll. In other words, with the Maori parliamentarians, along with these fledgling Young Maori Party of Feedback, Maui Pomare, and the religious person, the Reverend Rewiti Kohere, and to work out a new scheme that would work alongside the government. And Apirana and Sir James, who was in the Parliament at that time, drafted the Maori Councils Act of 1900. So that's where the Maori Council starts from. It consisted of about 500 Maori committees throughout the country, working to 19 districts. The first chair was Ihaya Putana from Waipawa. The patron was Sir James Curran. It was a pretty effective body for a while, but it never had the funding, and in time it started to collapse. What was supposed to be the source of the funding? The funding was going to come from rating on Maori land. But the government said the rates on Maori land is to be passed to the local authority. So these councils were responsible for the papakainga, and they had the task of keeping the sanitation systems, the water reticulation, lighting, curbing, channeling, all those things that had been already established up at up in that Taranaki district by Te Whiti and Tohu at Parihaka. They were going to create models like that, but the funding never came because the rates on Maori land had to go into the local government arrangements. So in my district, we still have a problem over this. We're running a case in the Waitangi Tribunal for our claims at the moment, and that's still one of our concerns. See, what happened to us was that all our rates on Maori land went to establish sewage systems and sanitation systems and water reticulation and roading and curbing for the township of Fielding. Our own marae, well, we had to get out of there in the 1940s because it was condemned. All our homes were condemned because we had long drop toilets, we had just one room houses, and we just an Orion stove up one end and the mattresses at the other end. That's where we all were brought up. We did not get any funding at all from the local authorities to maintain our papakainga. So we're going back into the Waitangi Tribunal and we're saying, the rating on Maori land, we pay it to the papakainga.
Good idea.
Government won't listen to it, but it's a starting point to get the discussion going. So that's the sort of thing that the council, New Zealand Maori Council, has been concerned about. The system broke down. In 1945 it was revived. Why was it revived in 1945? I think Brian would know all about this. It was because the Maori war effort was on, and the Maori Council system was used in order to raise funds, food stores, and recruitment for the Maori battalion. So that brought it back into life. I well remember it I was born only in 1940, but I do remember when the war ended in 1945 and some of the difficulties in our own district over it. My grandfather chaired the Maori war effort for my district, for our district of Raukawa. My grandmother was opposed to recruitment. So in our family we had one on one side of the table who was pushing the war effort, one on the other side who was opposing it, saying, it's not our fight and I stand with the puhi. So these are the sorts of issues that I grew up with and which kind of made me get very interested in doing law so that we might be able to deal with these sort of issues that we had. But from this, we were able to get Prime Minister Fraser to re-establish the New Zealand Maori Council under the Maori Social and Economic Advancement Act of 1945.
Fraser was national.
Well, that came on for a while, but it was still the same old problem of not an adequate funding, no real funding base. So they kept with the system, however. It was largely kept alive because the government did provide a pound-for-pound subsidy for maraes through the Maori Council system. And we did have our Maori welfare officers, although they were rapidly taken over by the government. when the government appointed Rangi Royal as the controller of Maori welfare, along with Charles Bennett and a number of others who were brought in there. The terrible thing about all of this was that in our district it was mainly the women who were doing the welfare officer work. When the government put in the paid officers, it was only the men who got the jobs in the Department of Maori Affairs. The women came much later. Anyhow, the women, quite rightly, got riced off, and in 1952 they formed the Maori Women's Welfare League, which has since gone on out on its own, and I think has done a hell of a lot better by being out there on its own than it might have done with us. But that's a bit of the background to us at that time. What we do need to bear in mind, though, is when the council system was first started in 1900, there were two major issues, one related to land, and Apirana set up land boards run by Maoris to handle that, and the other one was about health. So the council was actually born on with the drive of developing Maori health policy. And the soldiers that they sent out into the field to address that were the Maori nurses. And that was the start of the Maori Nursing Association, with the first qualified nurse coming through as Akanihi Hay from Whānau, the sister of Sam Hay, who was our first Maori lawyer. And the second nurse to come through in about 1911 was, I can't think of her first name, but she was a Mrs. Bangaparita, who had a very long life and died only quite recently. These women were quite remarkable because the big disease at that time was typhoid, and they went out into the communities dealing with typhoid epidemics. Nurse Hay herself was only out there for 4 years when she contracted typhoid. Her brother then nursed her and they both died. So we lost our first nurse and our first doctor very early on in the piece. By the time I came along, things were improving, but it was still the nurses that handled matters in our district, the district nurses in particular. Martha Tapunga, the sister of Roy Tapunga, who was the captain in the 28th Maori Battalion, was the nurse who looked after all our haki-hakis and other issues, that head lice and so on that we were supposed to have. But the big thing at that time was meningitis, polio meningitis. And one of my brothers got polio meningitis at that time. He was the only one in our community who survived it. The other three who contracted it died. But he then went on to take up a career in health. For my part, I was pushed into going on into law because that's where my grandfather thought the big gap was. Going back to the council, in 1962, it was reformed in order to create a national body. The person who led the push to re-establish the Maori Council in 1962 was Major Reifati Verko from Ngāti Pikio, Lake Rotuiti. He, however, died in 1962, the same year that the Act was passed, and the chairmanship fell to the nephew of the original Sir James Carroll, that was Sir Turi Carroll. He had managed the Kahungunu tribal executive since 1928. He spent 3 years as chair, and then it was taken over by Kei Te Hurinui Jones of Ngāti Manipoto, the Manipoto District Maori Council. He was there for 6 years, and then, as Hari has mentioned, the council was chaired by Sir Graham Latimer, who has chaired it from then right through to 2012. So Graham and I were when the Waitangi Tribunal got started, there were only three of us. There was myself and Graham, and along with one other, the third person was a Pākehā person, and that changed from time to time, but the original one was Max Willis. So I had a long association with Graham, and when Graham felt unable to continue in the job, and in fact he lost his voice at that time, Emily approached me about taking on the New Zealand Māori Council. My grandfather had been the chairman of the Maori Council in our district in Raukawa, so it seemed to me a pretty natural thing to do. But wow, it's been a pretty powerful group of persons that I could see who have worked with that council for a very long time. So that's a brief background, and then who am I? I come from, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, my marae is Aorangi, it's down in the Manawatu. It's that's on my grandfather's side, that's Ngāti Kaupata, Ngāti Raukawa, and then on my grandmother's side, it's Ngāti Rangatahi, it's the Hiri Marae, and that comes originally from Maniapoto. And we were all part of that group that came down with Te Rauparaha in 1821, rather the first group that came down in 1821 was our Rangatahi lot. Came down with Ngāti Toa, settled on Kapiti Island, moved to settle permanently in the Wairau Valley, got accosted there by a chap called Captain Wakefield, who said, I have purchased area of land, it's ours, and that's what you might have read about at school, the Wairau massacre. That was actually my forebears who fired the first shot in the New Zealand Wars in their attempt to protect their lands in the Wairau Valley in Nelson. There was a party of 50 who rode out to take out the Maoris who were squatting there, and one of them happened to be our leader at the time, Tarangi Hayata, and you don't pick a scrap with Tarangi Hayata. We lost 3, they lost 25. And the 3 that we lost, 2 of them were women, and one of them was because the women were fighting with the men in those days, and one of them was the wife of Tarangi Hayata as well. From there we got to the Hutt Valley, but we got kicked out of there by the troops, and some of our people were taken captive and taken across to Tasmania, where they were imprisoned. Their head gravestones are still there in Tasmania. And the rest of us got out of it and got right back to Kakariki, which is about as far away from Wellington as you could get, while still being in our own tribal territory. So that's the background. Can I just say again how much I've enjoyed being with you tonight, how grateful I am that you were able to have us here, and that it's so good to be amongst you and to see so many people who have achieved so well for your marae.
Edward, there's a waiata coming.
Yes. Oh, he found some people.
He played the piano, didn't he? Yeah, he did.
Don't ask me to sing. to please come out here so we can, I don't think they can hear me, so someone's going to need to go and run down there and grab them. Yep, John, I want you and your team out here so that we can all pay tribute to you. Yep. Yep. Come on, guys. Out you come. If you don't hurry, we're going to start the speeches again. All the kitchen, here we go. A big round of applause for the kitchen, for the great, delicious meals that have been served